This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Wildfires ripped through Algeria, killing 42 people, including soldiers. Ethiopia urges citizens to join its armed forces as conflict in the northern region spreads. And the WHO says Guinea monitoring 155 contacts after a confirmed Marburg virus case in that country. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers. Here are more stories making headlines this hour. In business news, Uganda's tourism reports over $1 billion in losses due to the pandemic. And in your sport, Lionel Messi gives his first press conference in Paris after officially signing with French giant PSG. We begin the hour in Ethiopia, where the government has urged citizens to show their patriotism by joining the fight against rebel Tigrayan forces. The call to arms came on Tuesday in a statement from the office of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. The statement comes just 6 weeks after the government declared a unilateral ceasefire in the northern region of Tigray. Federal troops have reportedly been instructed to launch an aggressive offensive against the Tigray People's Liberation Front, the TPLF. Fighters have ignored the ceasefire proposal by Addis Ababa and have continued attacks in the neighboring Afar and Amhara regions. The conflict has been going on for 9 months now and has led to a refugee crisis. CGTN's Gurum Chala has been following the unrest. Here is his latest report.
Ethiopians across the country have heard the breaking news through state-owned media houses. The office of the Prime Minister in a statement said, and I quote, "The battle is not with Tigray, but with the terrorist force that have found hiding in Tigray. Hence, we are battling to liberate the people of Tigray who are being used as instruments by TPLF," end of quote. The Prime Minister also called on citizens to enlist in the army to win the war and guarantee Ethiopia's sovereignty. It's been more than 9 months now since the war in Tigray began, mainly between the government force and the TPLF. Thousands have left their homes and millions need humanitarian assistance almost daily. The Ethiopian government a few weeks back had announced what it called a unilateral ceasefire aimed at delivering aid to the affected, creating peace for farmers in the region to plow, and more importantly, to make way for peaceful resolution of the ongoing conflict. That offer was almost immediately rejected by TPLF, which said they won't sit down for talks unless the government agrees to 7 conditions, including budget release for the region and release of prisoners. Now, reports say the Ethiopian National Defense Force is instructed to launch an aggressive offensive against TPLF force. Experts say the recent attacks in Afar and Amhara regions, which result in many deaths and left hundreds wounded, has triggered the government to run out of patience and return to the war. And the capture of the historic town of Lalibela by the TPLF militia is another reason for this. The international community, however, is still calling for a peaceful resolution of the conflict in northern Ethiopia. Gurum Chala, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Well, Gurum Chala is in Addis Ababa and joins us live now. Gurum, thank you so much for being with us. What is the latest situation in Tigray, Gurum?
Well, after the announcement that you've just heard from the report there of the government changing its stance from what it took as a unilateral ceasefire to an offensive, decided after TPLF force refused to accept the ceasefire, and they've continued attacking different locations in Amhara, Afar regional state, for instance. The government is now launching a full offensive. The National Defense Force, alongside regional force of Amhara, Oromia, and other regional forces, are now fully engaged against the TPLF force. Overnight, we have heard of different airstrikes in different locations in the Tigray regional state and captured locations in Amhara regional state taken by the Ethiopian force. From the Tigray regional state side, we're also hearing for instance, from TPLF leader Gabriel Mikhail, that they will continue fighting until the government accepts their preconditions, which include budget release and others. So we can report to you that war now has continued now that the government has re-entered this important conflict for what it called respecting Ethiopian sovereignty and defeating the enemy TPLF force.
Gurum, this latest development about the Prime Minister calling citizens to join the armed forces, how are people reacting to that?
Well, Hannah, this call was made perhaps a month or before that, and the Prime Minister time and again, even last year, was calling citizens to be part of the Ethiopian National Defense Force. In general terms, one, to make it stronger so that it can be ready for any mission that could, guarantee the nation's sovereignty. But at this time around, and using the latest press release and calls by the government, especially the Prime Minister himself, hundreds of thousands of young people who are ready to be soldiers have enlisted themselves. Many of them are now in training camps under the Ethiopian National Defense Force. Some are also militia and reserve force. Former soldiers are also joining the Ethiopian National Defense Force. So the call, we can say, that is successfully being responded by citizens, as citizens in their large numbers are joining the Ethiopian National Defense Force, Hannah.
Gurum, other than this large-scale recruitment that you've just spoken to us about, what is the government's strategy in dealing with the rebels in Tigray?
Well, the government's strategy, we can unfortunately say, did not work, which was the unilateral ceasefire, which was supposed to open the way for perhaps a peaceful resolution of the conflict in the north. And also, it was trying to open way for farmers of the Tigray regional state to use this rainy season to plow their lands, so that in the next year or so, at least aid can be minimized and they can be self-sustaining. However, in the next perhaps a few months, what we're going to expect is military solution, as the government yesterday released a press statement saying that there is no way out. We've tried through the international community, we've tried through elders and the others to bring TPLF to the roundtable negotiations to end this war. By the way, this is obviously a civil war and needs an internal resolution, but it didn't happen. So in the next few months, or if you like, next few weeks, we're going to expect only military resolutions, unless and otherwise there are other plans that the government has. But now the official announcement is to end this ongoing conflict in the north and the threat, as they say, of TPLF through military means. And that is really unfortunate, especially for the people who are being affected in different regions in Ethiopia, Hannah.
Thank you so much for all that. Gurum Chala speaking to us from Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. Well, meanwhile, the United Nations has regained access to the Mayani and Adi Harush camps that house Eritrean refugees in Ethiopia's Tigray province. UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric told reporters in New York that violent clashes in the area had prevented the staff of the UN Refugee Agency from reaching the camps since July. The UN is concerned about the fresh displacements as fighting continues in Ethiopia's Amhara and Afar regions. Over 100,000 people have been internally displaced. Basic services such as healthcare remain unavailable, and refugees continue to face dire conditions.
UNHCR and its partners say they've regained access to the Mai Aimi and Adi Harush camps that house Eritrean refugees in Tigray province. Violent clashes in the area had prevented UNHCR staff from reaching the camp since July 13th. The UN Refugee Agency adds that the delivery of urgently needed assistance restarted on August 5th for the 23,000 refugees that are in both camps. However, access remains limited due to security situation, and refugees continue to face dire conditions. Basic services such as health care remain unavailable, and clean drinking water is running out. UNHCR is calling for safe passage, which will allow refugees from Miami and Adi Harush to be moved to a new site of Alemwach near Dabat, which is about 135 kilometers away.
We move over to North Africa now, where in Algeria, at least 42 people have been killed in wildfires that have been burning through forests and villages in the Kabul region, which is east of the capital, Algiers. Firefighters and the army are still working to contain the flames, which have been raging since Monday. Here's CGTN's Nowatula Shabalala with the details.
The mountainous area of Kabylia has been covered with thick clouds of smoke. The wildfires have killed dozens of people, including soldiers, trying to save residents from the blazes. Some residents have been evacuating the area, while others use buckets to hold back the flames from engulfing their homes.
We are fighting fire to protect at least the houses. We evacuated the elderly and we stayed, as you can see.
We have 3 deaths here and 4 in the other village. The hospital is full.
Firefighters along with the army have been trying to contain the blazes. The region has no water dumping aircraft. Algeria's government has requested the international community to help. The authorities need planes to extinguish the fires.
I can't tell you if we are beating the fire, but we are fighting it with all that we have, and may God help us.
We are putting out a fire. We are doing all that we can. May God help us to stop it.
In a televised address, Algeria's Prime Minister has accused arsonists of igniting the flames. The Kabylia region borders the Mediterranean Sea. The area is just one out of at least 16 provinces where separate fires have raged through forest areas since Monday night. According to a European Union atmosphere monitor, the Mediterranean area has become a wildfire hotspot as massive blazes engulfed forests in Turkey and Greece. The fires have been worsened by a heat wave. Noktula Shabalala, CGTN.
Over to West Africa now, where in Nigeria, the country's Center for Disease Control has reported a cholera outbreak in 18 states. The disease has claimed the lives of 700 people so far. Authorities say most of the deceased are children. The majority of cases are from the states of Kano and Jigwa. Officials attribute the outbreak to recent heavy rains. There is concern that this could be the beginning of an epidemic, as authorities report that this cholera outbreak is the worst in Nigeria's history. Well, Desem Makende has been following up on that story for us and joined us live from Jos. Desem, thank you so much for joining us. What is the latest in the cholera outbreak in Nigeria?
Well, the latest is that health officials are really trying hard to see how they can contain the situation. But it's still really disturbing because only yesterday we had reports from Katsina where 10 people died as opposed to 60 people which died, which was a record last week alone. So it's not a very good situation, especially with the fact that resident doctors here in Nigeria who do a lot of work in hospitals have downed tools. They are on strike, having battled COVID-19 as well. So it's it's not a very good situation at all. It's also worsened by the fact that we are in the rainy season, and part of the reason by the National Center for Disease Control is the fact that, look, it is a disease that can be preventable, but there is so much, there's bad hygiene, there's a lot of bad water, and this is worsened by citizens defecating anyhow, carrying out, dropping, disposing trash illicitly, blocking drainages and all of that. So the situation is not very good. That is it at the moment. 22 states affected so far, and the nation's capital, Abuja. It's not a very good situation at all.
Jos, sorry, Desem, you are in Jos. Desem, how is the government dealing with this outbreak?
Yes, the government is carrying out a lot of campaigns. Of course, it says it's a disease that can be preventable and is curable as well. But the bulk of it lies on the individual, on the citizens. Personal hygiene, good water are critical to ensuring that we have a cholera-free Nigeria. So this has been the campaign. But in addition to that, the federal government, through the National Center for Disease Control, has activated a national cholera emergency operations center, where it has visited some states that has been affected really, really badly so far, to carry out emergency responses to help out in this situation. Of course, certain states are also delivering some kits, medical supply kits and consumables to many people who are going through very bad situations. But generally, there are campaigns that are ongoing, encouraging citizens to take their safety in their hands, because the health sector at the moment is really, really affected, especially with resident doctors being on strike. Of course, there's the issue of the coronavirus pandemic as well. So it's coming at a time where the advocacy is for citizens to take their health in their hands, so we don't have more cases. Wash your hands as regular as possible. Ensure you defecate properly, and of course, ensure you boil water before drinking. These are the campaigns that are ongoing at the moment, and the government hopes it will help the situation very well.
Desem, thank you so much for all that. Desem Makende speaking to us from Jos, Nigeria. Well, we're staying in Nigeria, where the army there says that 335 Boko Haram extremists, including 2 top commanders, have laid down their arms. The militants have withdrawn from the sect in response to a military offensive in the northeast. There have been several reports of militants surrendering since the reported death of the group's leader, Abubakar Shekau, earlier this year. Well, for more on this, we are now joined by CGTN's Deji Badmus in Lagos and Dr. Kabir Adamu, a security analyst and intelligence specialist focusing on the Sahel region. He's also a managing director of Beacon Consulting based in Lagos, Nigeria. Deji, let's begin with you. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much to you both for joining us. Deji, let's begin with you. What more can you tell us about Nigeria's ongoing offensive against insurgents in the country?
Well, Hannah, what we're seeing at this time is it appears, the military is making a lot of progress. What we have seen over the past couple of weeks now, about 3 weeks or a month now, we've seen a lot of Boko Haram and ISWAP fighters come out to surrender. You did talk about the bomb experts now of Boko Haram who surrendered a couple of days ago. The military says altogether, over the past 3 weeks or so, about 1,080 Boko Haram and ISWAP fighters have surrendered, including their family members. So what we're beginning to see, and the hope is that that continues, that it appears we're beginning to see a change now, a change in, the tide is now shifting to the side of the military. And we understand the military has been able to deploy more equipment. They've been able to intensify their campaign now against the terrorists. And then, of course, the infighting among the terrorists too has not helped at all. The killing of Abubakar Shekau too, some people have said, has had an effect on them. So the military is happy about this. Everyone is happy, and everyone just hopes this continues. And that if this continues, perhaps sooner than later, we would see maybe a complete, not a complete decimation of Boko Haram now, but at least a significant reduction now in their strength. Hannah?
Deji, I'll be back with you in a moment, but Kabir, let's come to you. What are your thoughts on Nigeria's military operations targeting the insurgency, and do you think that the strategy is going to work?
First off, like you indicated, this all started after a wave of attack by one of the factions, that's the Islamic State in West Africa province, where they succeeded in going into Sambisa forest and killing, as it were, the leader of the other faction, which is the Jamaat al-Ahli al-Dawat wal-Jihad. And so since then, we saw this surrender. There are 3 reasons that have been put forward behind the surrender. One of them is this move by ISWAP, the Islamic State in West Africa province. The second one is the increased military interdiction operations by the Nigerian military. Then the third one is likely the current weather, the rainfall, which has made mobility a bit more difficult for both groups, and so their supplies, have kind of finished, and so conditions in their camps have become even more difficult. Now, all the three reasons are sort of tied into each other. Whether this is going to be sustainable, I doubt, unfortunately, for a couple of reasons. Number one is immediately after the death of Abubakar Shekau, the leader of Jamaat al-Ahli al-Dawat wal Jihad, information filtered in that ISWAP is restructuring, and currently they've been able to create 4 camps, as it were, each of them with a commander, so more or less autonomous camps, and which makes it a bit more difficult really to tackle the group. Even if you kill the commander of one camp, it means the other 3 camps would be able to survive. And these camps are spread across the Lake Chad basin. So we think that part of the reason why we're seeing a lull in their attacks right now is because of this restructuring. Now, how is the Nigerian authority going to respond to this restructuring? We haven't seen much in that regard. All we're seeing is a continuation of interdiction operations. Those other components that would address the root causes of terrorism deny the ability of these groups to recruit and deny their ability to raise funding. We haven't seen much in that regard. So in the short term, successes, but in the long term, perhaps not likely, except if these other points I made are addressed.
DG, coming back to you on the back of what Kabir said, how prepared is the government in pushing through this strategy to deal with the insurgency?
Well, Hannah, what we have seen and what the approach that the government is adopting is what has been called a carrot and stick approach. So we are seeing, as Kabir said, increased interdiction. We are seeing increased military operation now. And of course, we are seeing more of this Boko Haram fighters surrender. So I think what is critical is what the government does with those who are surrendering. There's growing call for them to be prosecuted, and that there should not be blanket amnesty for these fighters now who are surrendering. So I think it's very critical what the government does, in terms of its rehabilitation program, and it has a program called the Safe Corridor, through which these insurgents are now surrendering. So how that program is implemented is very key. And for some of the insurgents too, who probably would want to surrender and have not done so, they'll be waiting to see, for instance, what happens to those who have surrendered, how the government handles it. Depending on how the government handles this now, more of them are likely to surrender in the coming weeks. But it's a very difficult situation for the government, no doubt. On the one hand, the government is coming under increasing pressure to deal decisively and ruthlessly with those who have surrendered, take them to court, try them, and what have you. Now, if the government does that, I mean, it's also, we also have to look at how these other terrorists who are yet to surrender, how they will view the action of the government. So it's a very complicated situation, but the government says it is willing to grant them amnesty. It is willing to carry out this rehabilitation, reintegrate those who have surrendered now to society after they would have gone through this rehabilitation program. And the government is going ahead with that. But
Deji, we're going to have to be candid. Deji, thank you so much for that. Deji, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much to you. Deji Badmo speaking to us from Lagos there, and Dr. Kabir Adamu, a security analyst and intelligence specialist focusing on the Sahel region. Let's head over to Guinea now, where health authorities are saying that 155 people are under surveillance after coming into contact with a Marburg virus victim. This comes at a time when a deadly virus with symptoms similar to those of Ebola has been reported in the West African country. Here's CGTN's Wanja Mugai with more.
It's a sad day here in Gukedu in Guinea's southwestern region. People are mourning the death of a neighbor, a woman believed to have succumbed to the Marburg virus. The emergence of the deadly virus was reported recently after a male patient at a local health center exhibited symptoms of fever and hemorrhage and died days later.
There is no known secondary case apart from the first case confirmed. The contacts have been traced, and 155 people are under observation for 3 weeks to make sure that they did not come into contact with the virus.
Medics are worried and are preparing to deal with a possible outbreak. The World Health Organization says the Marburg virus is transmitted through contact with bodily fluids, just like Ebola. Guinea is recovering from an Ebola resurgence that claimed the lives of 12 people. However, 2 months ago, the WHO declared the country Ebola-free. It is also in Guinea that the infamous Ebola in West Africa outbreak between 2014 and 2016 started.
The fact that this is first discovered in Guinea can also be interpreted in line with improved surveillance capacity, the improved detection capacity, and even the improved confirmation capacity, because the lab where the initial testing was done is right in Gekedu, in the district center where the case was found. So Guinea has built a robust health security system since the last Ebola outbreak from 2014 to 2016.
The global health body says the Marburg virus has been common among bats in the southern part of the West African country, bordering Sierra Leone and Liberia. Researchers are attributing the prevalence among humans to consumption of the birds. This will not be the first time the Marburg virus is being reported. It was first discovered in Marburg and Frankfurt cities in Germany. It has previously been reported in southern and eastern Africa, in Zimbabwe, Angola and Uganda. However, its prevalence in Guinea marks its first entry in West Africa. The outbreak is a threat to the country that has had a history of deadly epidemics and is currently experiencing the coronavirus pandemic. However, the increased vigilance among medics could help stop the Marburg virus from spreading beyond Gukedu. Wanjamungai, CGTN.
Regional bloc IGAD is urging South Sudanese warring factions to settle disputes in a peaceful manner. This is after conflict erupted between members of Sudan's People's Liberation Army in opposition on Saturday, leading to the death of about 30 people. Military generals within SPLA had deposed Riek Machar as party leader and head of military forces. IGAD's Executive Secretary Workneh Gebiehu urged the leaders to open avenues for dialogue while safeguarding implementation of the conflict resolution agreement. The regional body has been instrumental in the restoration of peace in the young nation. IGAD was active in mediating peace talks between President Salva Kiir and rival Riek Machar during the 5-year civil war, which was from 2013 to 2018. We're joined by CGTN's Patrick Ayet in Juba and Dr. Hassan Kanenje, director of the Horn Institute based in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you so much to you both for joining us. Patrick, let's start with you. What is the latest on the infighting in Sudan's People's Liberation Army in opposition?
Yes, Hannah, what is happening is that fighting actually has stopped, and on Tuesday, President Salva Kiir convened a meeting, in which meeting he called all his vice presidents, and after that meeting they made a statement. They said that they are urging the parties that are fighting to stop fighting, to also open up avenue for discussion. And that meeting also directed the peace monitoring body together with the ceasefire monitoring body to go on the ground and find out or carry out investigation to see what really happened and how such a conflict can be avoided in future. Of course, that followed the extraordinary IGAD Council of Ministers meeting, in which meeting also, brought about the same kind of issues for dialogue. And also it is expected that on Wednesday evening, the IGAD Special Envoy for South Sudan and then the IGAD Executive Secretary will be in South Sudan. It is expected that they will go up to the field where this fighting took place. They will also meet with the leadership in Juba to try to ensure that this issue is comprehensively resolved. Hannah.
Hassan, let's come to you. What do you think triggered the infighting in Vice President Machar's Sudan's People's Liberation Army in opposition?
I think the move to oust Riek Machar and the current conflict we see is informed by a sense of betrayal, especially by a faction led by General Simon Dual. A sense of betrayal accusing Riek Machar of nepotism, of being impatient with the slow pace of implementation of the peace, especially when it comes to the forced integration, and generally not fighting enough to be representative as they had hoped for. And so that sense of betrayal has contributed to the current factional fighting you're seeing within the Riek Machar camp.
Patrick, let's bring it to you. We have had reports of what the vice president and how he's reacted so far. But what more has he said about his ousting, and what can we expect in the coming days?
Yeah, we expect at least some movement, because one of the things also that came out of the meeting in which Riek was part was that they should, the parties, when I say they, the parties to the peace agreement should speed up the peace deal's implementation in terms of unifying the forces and graduating them. Because look, these forces that are now split from Dr. Riek Machar and they're fighting, these were supposed to already be government forces. They could have been graduated more than a year ago, but this did not happen. So what is happening in the country is that now there are several commander-in-chiefs. You have Riek Machar, who has his own forces. You have President Salva Kiir, who is the commander-in-chief of the government forces. So when you have these kind of situations, then it is prone to having this kind of situation where people clash. If graduation is done, where these people are united, they are all under one command, all under the government as government forces, then it will be easier to manage them. And this is what Riek actually said on Tuesday.
Hassan, let's come to you. Regional bloc IGAD has called on the two rival military factions to open the path to dialogue. Do you think that this will work, and what more do you think should be done?
If IGAD takes an initiative, especially a mediating role, in trying to bring the parties within SPLA together, there is a degree of likelihood that is going to make progress on it. However, all is going to depend on whether IGAD can be able to work with, let's say, the African Union and the international community to hold the parties to account. The challenge is, and what has been missing in the South Sudan theater, is sometimes and often there are no carrots and sticks necessary to ensure accountability, that the parties adhere to what they have agreed to. And so if IGAD can be able to mobilize the African Union and the international community to ensure that they play a mediating role, but at the same time hold the parties to account, I think that is going to be helpful. However, what is going to be more critical beyond this is to ensure that the implementation of the peace deal, the current peace deal, it's actually done and completed. What is contributing to these factional issues is because of the factional loyalties that still exist due to lack of force integration among South Sudanese within South Sudan. Now, if the implementation can be able to be undertaken, that is going to remove factional loyalties, but at the same time ensure that parties are held to account, meaning the sanctions have to be put in place for violators of the terms of the agreement. I think in the absence of that, it's going to be a challenge. But if we're going to have that, we're likely to see a more peaceful South Sudan in the years ahead.
Thank you so much to you both for joining us. CGTN's Patrick Oyet, who is speaking to us from Juba, and Dr. Hassan Kanenje, Director at the Horn Institute, International Institute for Strategic Studies, and he's based right here in Nairobi, Kenya. Let's now take a short break and return. More news making headlines right here on Africa Live.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Sharia,
Juba,
Johannesburg,
Ethiopia,
Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. The leader of the eastern-based Libyan National Army, General Khalifa Haftar, has said that he will not submit to the Libyan government. Haftar made the statement during the 81st anniversary of the Libyan army. He insisted that his party would only be subject to an authority elected by the people of Libya. General Haftar added that his militia is ready and will resist any pressure from Tripoli, the seat of the transition government. This comes despite his declaration in February of this year to support the transitional government headed by Abdelhamid Dbeibeh. The government assumed power in March after UN brokered talks to forge a political roadmap ending a 10-year conflict in the North African country. CGTN's Yasser Hakim is joining us for more on that story. He is in Cairo. Yasser, thank you so much for being on the program with us. Yasser, General Khalifa Haftar and Libyan Parliament Speaker Aguila Saleh are in Cairo. What is on the agenda for their visit?
Well, top of the agenda, obviously, is the latest on the Libyan presidential elections due on December 24th. Obviously, there's a lot of diversities and differences between the Libyan parties concerning the elections. The legal framework of the elections has not been set up yet because the political dialogue forum, that is UN-backed forum to try to reach a solution on how to go forward for the elections, has failed, according to the UN, has failed to reach any agreement. There are sticking points, such as how the elections will take place. Will be a direct elections, whereby direct voting, whereby the people will vote directly for a president, or it will be indirect, where the people will vote to a parliament, and the parliament will choose or vote for a president, elect a president. There's also another sticking point, is who will monitor the elections. Is it going to be the interim government at the moment, which will be monitoring the elections, or there will be a certain special committee set up to monitor the elections? And all these sticking points are obviously because Libya is divided into many factions and many political forces, and each force wants to make sure that its own benefits are coming out of this process, of this peace process, and that they will have some kind of piece of a cake after the elections or after the end of the roadmap for peace. And obviously the US ambassador to Libya, and he's also the US special envoy to Libya, is going to be meeting with Haftar and Aguila Saleh here in Cairo during their visit here. So he's in Cairo as well to try to find some kind of a solution or discuss the possible solutions to this very critical situation, especially that time is running out for the politicians in Libya to reach an agreement before the elections on December 24th. And all the UN and the interim government said they will not entertain any delay in the elections. So this time is set, and there has to be a conclusion and a solution before the time of the elections on the 24th of December.
Yes, sir. Considering what's happening in Libya, we know that this visit is coming at a time when political tensions are escalating over who controls the Libyan army. How is the visit expected to address that particular issue?
Yes, like you mentioned at the beginning, the Khalifa Haftar, General Haftar, has said just before coming to Cairo that the army will not give in to any political force except after the elections, when there's an elected, legitimate, powerful political party or entity. And until then, the National Libyan Army, under the leadership of Khalifa Haftar, will not be under control of any political force. So this is another issue that is also rejected by the opposition side, the opposing side of the political spectrum in Libya. Then you've got what is called the 5+5 Joint Military Committee, which was set up of different Libyan political forces or military forces, like you can say, Libyan militias, and they are sitting together or meeting to try to unite the military climate in Libya and tried to merge the different militias into one national Libyan army. Now, there also has been differences in that, and I think this will also be discussed here in Cairo. And then you've got what is called the Libyan National Army and the Libyan Interim Government militias. Now, those two are opposed because the interim government does not believe that the Haftar National Army is the Libyan National Army, but just another militia. And then you've got the foreign mercenaries in the country, whereby also there is a big sticking point there. They have to leave before the elections. You have 20,000 foreign mercenaries in Libya that have been brought in by foreign powers, mainly Turkey, Russia, and to a smaller extent the United Arab Emirates. Many of them have come from Syria and also from other African countries, and they are calling, the UN and the political forces are calling on the foreign powers to pull back those foreign mercenaries out of the country to be able to secure and reorganize the security situation in Libya, and that it would be under the control of the Libyan National Army, the Libyan militias, and the Libyan police. So there are different issues to be discussed concerning the military situation in Libya in Cairo. It will be Aqil Saleh, the head of the Parliament, the House of Representatives. You've got Khalifa Haftar, the head of the National Libyan Army, and the US envoy, along with the Egyptian top officials, trying to forge out some kind of a solution to all these sticking points that need to be addressed at the moment.
So much happening and such a complicated issue, but thank you so much for breaking it down for us. Yasser Hakim speaking to us from Cairo. Well, let's now take a short break and return. Your business news, including Uganda's tourism sector loses over $1 billion due to the pandemic. And rising temperatures cause cocoa yields to drop in Cameroon.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Well, let's now take a look at what's happening in the world of business. Uganda says that it has lost over $1 billion in tourism revenue since the outbreak of the two years ago. Local authorities say successive waves of COVID-19 have kept visitors away, especially from Uganda's national parks, which have been particularly hit. CGTN's Hilary Ayesiga reports.
Gerald Katongole is going over his bookings. Some visitors have cancelled, while others are rescheduling their travel plans. He blames this situation on the second wave of COVID-19, which hit the country 2 months ago.
You wouldn't really convince some tourists to still come to the country after hearing of a lockdown. Some really did not come, so they cancelled. Those that were already in the country, we managed to work with them.
Katongole says he has lost about $5,000 in cancellations in the last 2 months alone. Government figures show that tourism revenues have dropped by 73% in the last 2 years because of the pandemic. And in order to make up some of the shortfall in revenue, the government is trying to promote domestic tourism. The Ugandan government has launched a campaign dubbed Take on the Pearl, which is designed to attract more Ugandans to the national parks.
Government has intensified promotional campaigns specifically to promote domestic tourism, to attract more Ugandans to visit Uganda, but also to attract other international markets.
The government is also handing out tax incentives and low-interest loans to tour companies.
Uganda Development Bank was capitalized by government to extend low-interest credits to tourism enterprises. These interest rates offered by UDB are about half the rates availed to private businesses by other commercial institutions within the country.
The government also hopes that COVID-19 vaccines will help bring confidence back to the travel industry. Just 1 million people out of 22 million have been vaccinated so far, making hopes of a return to normal elusive. The key will be keeping tour operators afloat in the more immediate future. Hilara Isiga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
High carbon emissions are pushing temperatures in cocoa-producing countries to rise by an average of 3.8 degrees Fahrenheit. That's according to experts who say that this is drying up the moisture needed for trees to flourish, devastating the region's cocoa production. The UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says that the change in climate patterns could have a negative impact on export earnings, which the countries depend on. CGTN's Alexandria Majala finds out how this has impacted cocoa farming in Cameroon.
For more than 6 decades, the cocoa that Richard Ambassa Mbasiga harvested from his plantation in central Cameroon faithfully paid for everything his family needed. Irregular rainfall and prolonged dry seasons have since sucked the moisture from the soil, killed cocoa trees, and cut the yield from his farm. Now unable to fill even a single bag with beans, the 77-year-old struggles just to buy soap with the harvest that once put his children through school.
I used to produce about 15 bags per year, and now I cannot even produce 1 bag. As you can see, I cannot produce even 1 bag. I cannot. There has been 4 months of drought. You see here, everything is scorched. This used to be a productive plantation. Now everything is scorched. 3 hectares are destroyed because of the drought. I present to you my 3-hectare plantation. How am I going to live with my family?
Farmers are struggling to even achieve yields of just 500 kilograms per hectare compared to 1 ton per hectare a few years back. Prolonged dry seasons linked to climate change has made poor harvest a new reality for many cocoa farmers who farm in small individual holdings. This leaves Africa's 3rd largest cocoa producer, behind Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana, struggling to meet a long-term target of boosting cocoa output to over 300,000 tons annually.
I cleared at least 2 hectares. The rest is abandoned. I'm discouraged to clear it. I'm discouraged to clear the 2.5 hectares left here.
A report by United Nations panel of experts ahead of the 2015 Paris Climate Summit warned that if global carbon emissions continue to rise, cocoa economies too could melt away in the ensuing heat. Cocoa trees thrive in humid equatorial areas that experience predictable bouts of sunshine and heavy rain like West and Central Africa, where about 70% of the world's beans currently come from. If carbon emissions aren't soon curbed, climate scientists expect temperatures in cocoa-producing countries to rise by 3.8 degrees Fahrenheit on average, drying up the moisture needed for trees to flourish and devastating the region's cocoa production, the UN report said. Alexandria Mashala for CGTN.
In sport news coming up after the break, here's what you can expect. Lionel Messi gives his first press conference in Paris after officially signing with French giants PSG.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa,